YouTube channel. Now, I'm going to turn over the floor to our guests, Shirley and Jonathan, and let them take it away. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Lena. And again, we'd
Thank
like
you.
to thank everyone's interest in FlySafe. At its core, our mission is simple but urgent. It's to end financial abuse. We think about it, financial abuse is often a hidden pool of gender-based violence. It keeps people trapped by controlling their access to money for financial independence. And we try to work here through FiSafe and our partnerships to cut those strings of control while also shining a light on the unique superpowers, I like to call them, that credit unions bring to their communities. So we'd like to step into Women's History Month and look ahead to the 2026 International Women's Day theme of Give to Gain. And this conversation is going to highlight the natural alignment between WOKU, the Global Women's Leadership Network, and Purple Bridges through the Fight Safe initiative. So again, thank you everyone for attending, and we'll move on. So as Lena introduced, both myself and Jonathan as two of the four founders of Purple Bridges, which houses the FiSafe initiative. And this really came as an extension of our compassion and passionate work that we have within the credit union system to ensure that everyone has access to financial inclusion and empowerment.
Yeah, and good morning, everybody. Jonathan Taylor here. Been in the movement now for 18 years. Thank you, Lena, for having us, and a big shout out to everybody who made this possible today. I am a full-time girl dad. I have 3 daughters. That is the fire in my belly for doing the work that I do here. And I've been doing this work now for 4 years, coming up on 5 years. Blessed to have such an incredible group of people in support, volunteering, and helping us in this space. Along with myself and Shirley, we also have other 2 founders, Joe and Keith Wynn from Green Profit Solutions, and then some of our other board members, very well known in the credit union space here in the United States, but Sarah Cook, the founder CEO of the Credit Union Connection. Shout out to Sarah. I think she's on. Asha Connors, the executive director of ProBridge, which is a subsidiary of Trellance. Lorian Mancuso, partner engagement manager at Circle, and Kristen Evans, VP of marketing and communication at Circle. Shout out to our board. We love our board.
As we think about this not just being an issue in the US or any other single country, this is literally an international crisis that we're experiencing. And the intent of financial cooperatives is, like I said, people helping people. But I think it's really important for us to kind of ground ourselves in some of these statistics that surround global domestic violence and human trafficking. 1 in 3 women globally have experienced abuse in their lives. And of those, 94 to 99%, so really almost 100%, have cases which involve some level of financial abuse. And then even about 80% of those survivors are prevented by their partners from having money to buy basic needs like food or shelter, clothing, medicines. And it's a staggering expense to the worldwide economy when we think that about 1.5 to $2 trillion is the cost of gender-based violence annually worldwide. Just thinking about this whole encirclement of this opportunity for us as credit unions to assist from taking people as being financially abused to financially empowered, and also the benefits that it has back to the economy. We want to obviously note too about the extensiveness of this damage, causing tarnished credit scores, restricted access to banking and accounts, everything that we take for granted every day. There's also other challenges that these survivors and thrivers experience. We talk about cultural differences and factors. In some cultures, domestic violence is considered a private family matter, making survivors probably less likely to disclose their abuse. Or gender roles and expectations, traditional norms around marriage, obedience, or financial control can normalize abusive behaviors. And also that fear and lack of trust with deportation concerns, or just a simple lack of trust in the authorities, or just thinking about the past discrimination or systemic inequities may cause that hesitation in seeking help from financial institutions as well. And then just that financial dependence, you know, the abusers controlling the money, controlling the credit, controlling that financial freedom, obviously makes it almost impossible to have financial independence.
Yeah, it's a great point, Shirley. And one thing that I'll just note here too is that, as credit union professionals, we sometimes wonder why is it difficult for folks to ask for help? Well, these are also reasons for that as well. There are language barriers. There is fear and lack of trust with different institutions. And so we've just got to be mindful as we're doing this work that, a lot of these folks that are struggling to get out, they've heard no a lot, and there's been a lot of trust broken. And so that's a part of the program that we educate on. So what is financial abuse? Financial abuse, or FA is the acronym, at its core, it's a behavior that seeks to control a person's ability to acquire, use, or maintain economic resources, and threatens their self-sufficiency and their financial autonomy. There are many, many different forms of this, and it really is almost a scale, right, of different things. That could be forcing a partner to miss, leave, or be late to work, harassing a partner at work, controlling how the money is spent, withholding money or basic living resources, giving a partner an allowance, stealing money or credit, property, or identity from a partner, forcing a partner to file fraudulent legal or financial documents, or overspending on credit cards, maxing out credit lines while they protect their credit. All of those are simple forms of financial abuse. And I'm sure everybody that's hearing this now is thinking about somebody that they know that has experienced this in their lives personally. And when 1 in 3 women, 1 in 4 men are survivors or victims of domestic violence or human trafficking, and 99% of those have a financial abuse situation, this is happening 1 in 3 in women, 1 in 4 in men. So think about the people in your life and realize that this is all around us every day, all at once.
So I think when we're thinking about this question, so how have credit unions historically fought financial abuse? And I think especially when we tie this uniquely around domestic violence survivors and human trafficking survivors, sometimes it's a little bit uncomfortable. We think that we have to start a whole new thing. And we really don't. I think that if credit unions, step back, or financial cooperatives step back and think about what is the tenet of the basis of our products and services, it's typically some type of savings account, checking account, small dollar loan, personal loan, auto loans. With that as your base, it is very easy to customize. But, let's think about, we have really put a lot of effort, money, and time into understanding elder abuse. We think about this in the terms of elder abuse. Combating financial abuse in domestic violence and human trafficking survivors is really just an evolution of the work in the movement we're already doing. And so, just to capitalize on that already built that foundation. So we're not inventing anything new. We're just looking at this through a different lens to understand the uniqueness and the troubles and the concerns that survivors have, and how can we serve them best.
It's such a good point, Shirley, because it's so much easier to build on a foundation that's already been built. And that's really what we're saying. Think about think about what you've done in the work of elder abuse, and now how do we 3-degree shift it?
Yeah. And as we were mentioning, 1 in 3, 1 in 2 of us actually know somebody that has been through this. So this is around us everywhere. Survivors are everywhere. And, it's quite likely that these victims are even among your employees right now. And so if not them, then surely it affects someone close to them. This epidemic has thrived in the dark too long. So we want to show you how to help your communities by encouraging those hidden victims to safely learn about resources, to seek out the help. And for those who have already made it part way, we want to assist your credit union or your financial cooperative in extending a hand up in building a plan of financial wellness. So again, we have to look at internally at our employees, even our current members, and how do we address and identify those that are suffering from financial abuse, and then even looking into our communities at future members that need our help.
So our approach is simple. It's really about empowering conversations. We want to put that power back in the survivor's hands. We want to look at what are the strings of control that is holding this survivor back from breaking free. How do we unwind those? How do we cut those? And specifically in our superpowers, which is the financial challenges of the situation. It's important that we look at how can our banking process be compassionate? How can we make sure that although we need to manage the risk for sure, but we've got a program that is unique and compassionate to what these folks are going through, and along with that, having that empathetic look. And through that, the credit unions receive consulting and training to work with those survivors, because this isn't a standard member situation. But the nice thing about doing this work is that it applies to so many other folks that are going through trauma in their life, and it can be really applied well across the board. So for us, we want to use training, use consulting, and use technology. Together, we believe we can lift those survivors up out of the shadows and address the issues like broken credit, coerced debit, housing, transportation, or just to provide a nest egg, right, by starting a savings or a checking account. So what are the key components to the program? Well, really, it's four major things. It's connect, assist, empower, and educate. And these are the four key components. Whether anybody out there wants to start their own program or whatnot, or work with us, these are the four key components of that are important.
So thank you, Jonathan. Let's kind of start on the first one, which is connect. And here in the United States and other countries, we obviously are looking to connect domestic violence and human trafficking agencies and the credit unions or financial cooperatives together to be able to engage with survivors and determine their needs. It is so important, as we'll see here in a minute, when we talk about our Safe Path Bridge, that this has to be a circle. We have to be able to have, obviously, the credit union, the NGO or the resource center, and obviously the survivor all involved in here and know where we connect in and where we plug in on that path. We have to look at how those particular agencies are going to be involved or need to be involved. One is just simply looking at skill sets, filtering those needs. This is a lot of times where the agencies come into play to say, what are the unique problems and situations that survivor is going through? Looking at other resources beyond just financial. Obviously, financial abuse is just one part of this alignment of numerous problems and numerous troubles that these survivors are going through. So being connected to other resources in the community. Fraud detection, abuser spoofing. Oftentimes we may see that the abuser is forcing the survivor to go in and open accounts that are fraudulent, or to create issues where fraud is going to become a problem. And then obviously that home-based relationship is going to protect the credit union if members go quiet. How do we address that? How do we as credit unions interject into this circle to be able to determine the safety of that member, but also realizing that coordination takes time.
Absolutely. And all of those are key elements as to why that local agency, whether it's a domestic violence agency or a human trafficking agency, is key, because they have a very unique skill set specifically working in this space. They really are the experts when it comes to working with these survivors. And so they're a key pillar, and they're a huge ally and asset to us working with these folks in every community.
The second part of that is the assist step. Survivors are going to regain that financial control with savings and checking and other account types that we can customize to help them through their individual needs. again, while we were talking about credit unions having those base products of the savings account and, unsecured lending and secured lending, we need to kind of take it one step and have trauma-informed products, services, and processes, which uniquely will help and align with the needs of those survivors. First, for example, specifically coded accounts and products, to be able to track the impacts of those particular loans or deposits or services that we are using to assist those in financial abuse. Also, having those no credit or abuse credit loan products. And again, a lot of credit unions offer these through the offer of an emergency loan or disaster loan. A lot of times credit is not needed, no credit is pulled. Those are the same types of loans that we're talking about here. And then even looking at our partners. For example, we partner with a group called Inspire World Foundation, and they provide an outlet to do emergency cash pickups without an ATM card. So, looking at our infrastructure and our ecosystem is so important because, again, not one single entity can do this alone, and we do need a village.
Yeah, there's so many incredible organizations out there that have one or a couple pieces of this difficult puzzle to solve. So it's great to have those alliances for sure. Next is empower, and how can we empower these survivors? Well, in many ways, but one of the major factors, at least in the United States, that makes it difficult to move on and be able to become independent is if the credit's been abused, because you cannot rent an apartment, you can't get a loan, you can't get a job even sometimes if your credit has been damaged. And so what are some ways that credit unions can utilize their superpower of credit rebuilding? Well, we can get creative and do like a dual purpose loan. And so we've had credit unions that would lend for specific monthly utilities. Take a cell phone plan, for instance, and we'll even lend for the annual subscription of the phone plan. And so that new member, that survivor or current member, can be paying for that phone plan on a monthly basis back to the credit union, which builds the credit while also gets them used to that utility bill moving forward. And then there's borrow and save, share secured programs that can be utilized, just as another example. And really the goal is to take them from crisis lending to stability lending with much needed resource, things that they need in their life, like auto, housing. This can be a powerful use of CDFI or LID funds, serving the vulnerable populations that are out there. And so for credit unions that have access to that or are looking for really powerful programs to serve the vulnerable populations, there certainly can be one of those. And really, it's about embracing the credit union superpowers by empowering these survivors. Last one here is educate. So it's important that we not only educate the survivor on how to become, financially sound, but also educating the credit unions as well. So financial counseling and resources for the survivors, as I mentioned, and within that is also not just how to balance a budget, how to get good credit. It's about leveraging tools that are in your environment that you have access to. A great example is there's a wonderful, a wonderful fintech that allows for members of modest means to find government program assistance. So things like that that can really be important. Having trauma-informed training for the staff is paramount, as we mentioned before, making sure they understand what these survivors are going through and what the trauma responses are, not only for their situation, but also when it comes to money as well, and really what how that needs to be handled and what that relationship needs to look like. And then education on the technology, which is paramount, the how do we do this, how do we work with the local agencies through technology to keep the survivors safe, and then having that awareness and relationship training between both the credit unions and the local agencies is also important. That the folks that are doing the work on the agency side of the coin understand the credit union space. And vice versa, right? Because those relationships are the ones that are truly going to help.
JT,
And
I just wanted to add here that all of this is coming together because one of the important goals here is we don't want to re-traumatize. And while
100%.
that may be, unintentional, there are some things that as just daily parts of our processes as credit unions, we may encounter that and, like I said, re-traumatize, and maybe that person doesn't ever come back. So
Right.
this is why this is so important.
Absolutely. And we want to help. We don't want to do any accidental harm, right, in the process. So I talked about the importance of both the agency side, which here is represented on the left with the DVRC, which is an acronym for Domestic Violence Resource Center. But there's lots of different names for these wonderful organizations, these NGOs. And the credit union is the second pillar. You really can't have the bridge, which is why we're called purple bridges, by the way. That metaphor just works so beautifully here. You can't have the bridge without those two pillars. So you really need, if a credit union is going to have a program like this, they really need that local domestic violence or human trafficking or women's shelter, whatever the name is for that agency that works with these individuals. You need that there in the program. That's the home base, and they work with the survivors to address all the immediate needs. Okay. Now, once a financial need is identified, which again, 99% of the time, that this is here, then through the technology, they are able to safely, securely connect in with the credit union that's participating and begin to help that survivor on their way. And sometimes it's just something as simple as an account. They just need an account. Sometimes, it gets into more on the lending side once the account is established, but it's that's usually where it starts. And then from there, you see that it kind of turns into a cycle, right? Because there undoubtedly will be some needs that are flushed out while they're working with the credit union that will need to go back to the resource center or communicate back to the resource center, because they really have a hub of different products and services for the survivors. The goal is, after we get from crisis lending, get them into aftercare, where the survivor receives ongoing financial wellness and counseling and support from the credit union. The goal of all of this, of course, is that survivor regains financial independence and confidence. And from there, for the credit union, you have a lifelong loyal member, because you were there to help them when no one else would.
I happen to be a data person, so I love the opportunity when we can help credit unions understand how they can use their data better. And your data, the power of your data is paramount and can literally save lives. And, when we think about the enormous amount of data that we have within our core and other technologies that we use, when we start to see those patterns, as we mentioned, financial abuse is in your credit union right now with members and employees. Things like looking at the core accounts and the transactions. Are there unusual trends in those types of transactions? Is there a check or a debit being given to someone for large amounts on a continual basis? Again, looking at those home banking transactions, where are those funds going in and out? Direct deposits, again, if we're looking to see that there was a consistency in direct deposits and all of a sudden that disappears. Loan delinquencies, again, if we had someone that was consistently paying and all of a sudden we see 30, 60, 90, 120-day delinquencies happening on one, and then another loan, we start to see overdrafts. Those are typical things that we can identify in our data. And then obviously credit reports, as we were mentioning before, abusers will abuse a survivor's credit. They will try to make them literally totally dependent on them. And ruining credit, obviously, as Jonathan was saying, is a way of doing that. Without credit reports, you potentially can't get an apartment. And Obviously, as we know, stable housing is one of the important foundations of financial empowerment. So again, it goes back to, and as an example, what do you pull and what do you look at for elder abuse? It's almost in the same line of thought process to think about this and how we use our data to save lives.
Yeah, and it's important that you set up flags. It's about asking questions internally first. It just because something looks a little off does not necessarily mean it is off, but it's important that we start to get those indicators so that we can start to ask those questions. If it's a couple, for instance, and only one direct deposits in the account, well, why is that? If all the bills are coming out of that account, just little things like that. And we understand that this is tricky because we're dealing with member privacy and we're also dealing with survivor privacy. So we've got kind of two lanes that we've got and two paths that we have to walk with. But that's a part of the training and support that you get with us. So we stumbled upon a buzzword as we were doing this work one day. We were looking at and listening to a lot of the challenges between some credit unions and a local domestic violence agency. And they were talking about different things, different pinch points, different reasons why it's hard to move somebody through, or communication issues. And I just kept thinking that, in my almost 20-year CUSO career, there wasn't anything that was being brought up that couldn't be at least helped with technology. But obviously we can't replace people in the process, especially with something like this. So I said, guys, I think what we need to do is we need to take technology and empathy and combine them and make tempathy. And we all looked at each other and went, oh, that's a really cool buzzword. So at here with FiSafe, we brew tempathy. And what does that look like? What we've done is we've gone out and we have found the best in breed empathy technologies, or tempathy technologies, that are have a very important piece of the puzzle in order to snip some of the most crucial threads of control. So we're going to talk just high level about a few of them right now. Keep in mind, we do have multiple partners for things, so we're just going to be talking high level with some of the features and some of the things that we find are really paramount to supporting a survivor and keeping them safe. But it's three pieces. There's a secret safety app that is clandestine, that is safe for the survivor to use. There's a telecom element. We have to figure out a way to free the phone, because you can't call for help if you can't call. And then also having safe accounts, having accounts that are hidden from an abuser, so that a survivor can plan their escape is paramount.
Jonathan, I think, when we were looking at tools, or when anybody is looking at tools, and the ability to use those across state lines or even on an international basis, that's really important, as we know, to have those kind of tools that do not have those barriers of
Yep.
boundaries.
100%, 100%. So I'm going to tackle the first one, and then I'm going to hand it over to Shirley to tackle probably the most crucial piece. But on the telecom side, I mentioned before, it's really hard to call for help if you can't call. If the abuser, in this case, the controller, is monitoring the phone for calls, for texts, for location, for apps downloaded. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. It can be very, very dangerous. And that was one of the major pinch points that we had run into in our previous program. And so, how do we solve for that? And so one of the technology features that we offer is having the ability to have discrete and safe access with no phone numbers, emails, phone minutes, data needed. You can stay connected even if the phone is being monitored, because everything is being done within the app itself, and the app is disguised. It's actually disguised as a game. And so even if the abuser sees it on the phone, they open it up, it's not going to show them what its true use is. And then we also have the option for safe calling. So being able to call within the app, there's no trace of calls on your call log or phone bill. And that allows you to access local, national, international resources safely.
So, when we think about the whole realm of that Tempathy and our Safe Path, the safety app portion of this is really the hub of the Tempathy strategy and a crucial piece of this overall puzzle. With what we're featuring on this safety app and our partnership, one of the first things is combating an attack. Obviously, if you are being threatened or whatever, having the ability to call for help. And so it's not just the call for help, but it's being able to record what is going on around you, which is a critical portion of gathering the data for prosecution. So with this particular safety app, we can select up to 7 emergency contacts, whether that's family, friends, NGOs, service providers, even the police in some cases. It's also creating a secure support network by connecting those domestic violence resource centers and your credit union and other partners that you have in your ecosystem. Obviously, it's important to have the multi-language support. So this does have that opportunity. And then the video, audio, and chat communication. It's extremely important to have various ways of being able to communicate within the app itself, and all 3 of those are held within this. And really, there's no need to retell your story. So your information that you happen to put within the very secure app is shared securely with trusted advocates. Those trusted advocates being other survivors, which enter the app anonymously, or through professionals like psychiatrists, counselors, attorneys, doctors, and others. Very private, very secure, that your sensitive data as a survivor is encrypted and survivor control. So you as a survivor have complete control of how the safety app is set up for you. And then obviously it helps to keep organizations in clear support lanes. So you've got this coordinated and organized assistance through the various components in the app so that you can pull out and utilize what you need at what time. As an extension of this, it's also important to note within the safety app, there are forum rooms to talk, and anonymously if needed. You have the ability to enter that. And this is with verified professionals and others on important and critical topics that may be unique to the survivor or the survivor community. And then, you also have the ability to have that peer-to-peer discussion as being facilitated. There's also the ability to have private chats when women want to receive free consultations on just an individual basis. Within the network itself, it is very easily navigatable. It has a great database on the back end to consolidate all the information of the NGOs, government organizations, those professionals, and even your credit union and anything that it provides to help in that defense and support, and also to empower the women in multiple formats. And for many women with different contexts, it can be hard to find information about resources in your area. So this function is highly customizable to your geographic region, to your unique area, so that the survivors in your area know what is available to them. Very, very important.
Yeah. And just to be clear for everybody, the real takeaway here isn't that we've got a great program. It's that these are crucial tools that if you were to set up your own program, that you would have a solution for, because safety is paramount in this process. And there's a reason why it's so difficult for folks to get out. And it's because they don't have, in many cases, or in most cases, the technology support in order to help them get the help that they need. And of course, the credit unions are a key point in that. And so this is, these are just some great examples. And these are things, a lot of the things that we now have, we've learned the hard way we needed to get. And so that is certainly one of the benefits of working with folks who have been doing the work, is that these professionals that have put this together have learned over years what is needed. So we recommend strongly that if you're going to do a program like this, don't just reach out to your local your local agency, make sure that there's a technology in between that will help you communicate together. The last piece of the three pieces, right? Because just to review, where is it? We've got three here, right? The secret safety app, the telecom. Safe accounts are the last piece. And this has been, honestly, one of the most challenging pieces. We're very, very excited because technology has caught up to a point where we can do some incredible things with different accounts. So we call these safe accounts. And essentially, a lot of you have probably heard of the power of digital wallets and the power of stable coins and digital assets. We are working towards having digital wallets actually inside the safety apps. Why? Because we want to empower survivors with secret or clandestine accounts and money movement across borders, really anywhere in the world. That can convert and transition and transfer any currency instantly. One of the hardest things to do in situations like this is to send and receive money in different currency forms. And so digital wallets can and are breaking down all of those barriers very, very quickly. So that allows the survivor to plan and fund their escape and move on with their lives. And they can send payments we can even send payments to unbanked. So if a survivor hasn't got to the point yet where they have a financial institution, or maybe they're in a country where it's difficult for them to do that without their husband, payments can actually be sent through this technology in the form of digital gift cards, which is a wonderful, wonderful piece. All while staying connected to the credit union movement. So this is a really exciting new piece that we're working on right now. Now, the safety app provider that we just highlighted, they are currently in these countries. However, they are rocking and rolling out there. They're getting tremendous support from UN and many other organizations that are out there. And so talking to Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Argentina, Brazil, Chile, and more. Now, the one thing that they don't have in these countries currently is that credit union association. And so what we're trying to do, and part of our partnership goal with them, is that we can connect the credit union movements in these countries into the safety app, so that survivors that are in these countries, that, by the way, are paying nothing for the technology. There's no cost to a survivor for any of this technology. But the goal is that we can plug in, and that really is our call to action for everybody today. Please understand that this technology can be global. We want it to be global, and we want to help as many people worldwide. So this is the low-hanging fruit right now for those that know the organizations in these countries. We're trying to plug the credit union movements in with this technology in order to help survivors and combat financial abuse.
Thank you, Jonathan. So, we decided that the FISAFE obviously is the base of what we're doing here, but we also realized that there are a multitude of other arenas that this could extend out into. So that's why we created FISAFE for events. One of the first things we thought about was, support safety initiatives at conferences. So FISAFE for events really extends our FISAFE platform into those live conference environments. It was developed to provide attendees with discrete access to support resources, emergency contacts, and that real-time assistance if safety concerns arise. And the reason for this was really to ensure that events are not just empowering, but also secure. Then we think about, enhancing our empowerment experiences. And when we integrate safety and resource access and community support into these events experiences, we're really strengthening psychological safety and inclusion so that attendees feel supported, which increases engagement, participation, and really overall impact of the conference. It's also an opportunity to create new sponsorship and funding opportunities. The FI-SAFE for events can open up new pathways for aligned sponsors to support, the safety, wellness, and empowerment initiatives. And it also creates a visible and meaningful sponsorship category tied directly to attendee well-being and social impact, which is so important. And then obviously to support our Global Women's Leadership Network sister societies with recruitment and fundraising. The platform can also be leveraged during these credit union events to promote membership or highlight initiatives and to facilitate donations with technology. So it really becomes a practical tool for that outreach and that engagement and that mission-driven fundraising.
Yeah, this really was a passion project that came out of several of our board members, and so very, very proud of both Lorianne and Joe, who really spearheaded this. And from there, the light went on in our heads when many of us are members of different Global Women's Leadership Network sister societies, and we realized that these fun pieces that we do as part of FI-SAFE events really could be wonderful ways for the sister societies to promote, to recruit, and to fundraise. And so some of the examples there, and this is all on our website, but some of our examples there for some of the activities could be, Pilates, Zumba, self-defense classes. Joe's a black belt in karate and has offered his services. Women's walking, running clubs, yoga, lots of different things. More than just drinking at events, right? Let's do something that's empowering, something healthy, right? As a group, and in ways that we can highlight the sister societies and get more people involved. Because one of the things that we've heard from some of those directors is we do a great once a year thing, and then 364 days happen, and then we do another great thing. And how can we do more as sister societies in between? And so we'd really love to support, and we'd really love to help with that. So, doing well while doing good really is, I think, a mantra that's important in the credit union space. We want survivors to succeed, and we want to support. Keep in mind, this is already in your credit union, whether it's showing up through delinquencies or employment struggles from some of your employees. There are some dark reasons for some of the things that you're seeing in your data, and the credit union and the survivors can thrive together.
So you're probably thinking, well, why now? As we were talking about, it is truly an extension of the People Helping People Foundation that runs the credit union movement. Addressing financial abuse is a natural extension of that purpose. When we think about members, especially younger generations, along with these survivors, are really seeking financial institutions that live their lives and take meaningful social action. Very important. And again, works well in alignment with credit unions. And then obviously when staff see their workplace activity protecting member safety and dignity, engagement and pride increases. And I think, all of those are extensions of the why now. Also, there's ways that mission-aligned efforts can deepen the relationships and actually attract partners to work with the credit union. I think taking a stand against financial abuse builds that deeper trust with members who need safe and supportive financial relationships, not just those that are suffering from financial abuse in a survivor mode, but obviously financial abuse extends into other areas as well. Thinking about the community organizations and the nonprofits and advocates that are actively seeking financial partners who prioritize safety and empowerment. And then when we think about the mission-driven collaboration positions credit unions as leaders, it's strengthening our reputation, our visibility, and our long-term growth in our community. So it really is an opportunity to shine that bright light for credit unions and then to take credit for the good that you do.
So what we're asking very simply, very humbly here is be the change. We truly believe that credit unions have the superpowers needed to combat financial abuse through compassionate banking, through crisis lending programs, through your community leadership, expanding that people helping people engagement. It's incredible how many credit unions are now we're hearing from that are polling their team on what are some new initiatives that we want to do to help the community. And financial abuse for survivors is coming up over and over again. So if that's a question you haven't pulled your team, your staff with, that might be a great place to start, and you'll be surprised what you hear, because this is something that's really it's everywhere. So it's resonating with everybody. We provide select staff in trauma-informed financial training. I teach all the staff how to recognize the signs of abuse and what we do and gain management buy-in for these principles. So thank you all very, very much. We really appreciate your time. We know this was a lot to take in, so thank you for coming along. There is a QR code there if you want to learn more about how you can build your own model or work with us. And with that, we'll open it up to any questions.
Okay, team. So thank you. Well, thank you first of all for spending time and, putting a different light on all of this. I think a lot of information shared. I'm stuck with the huge numbers that you shared of the 1.5 to $2 trillion, which I think is just overwhelming. But we do have some questions in the chat from some of our guests here,
Great.
attendees, and I love seeing the international attendance here on our webinar. I'm going to combine two. We have a question from Victoria, a simpler and a more complex one. So I'll start with a simpler one. Victoria is asking us if there's an age limit of women who can be assisted through the program. And in continuation, she is asking a more complex question, which I'm not sure how much we can get into, is about the role from this work that's presented, the role of the law regarding policies, and how the policies sort of create the impact on financial safety and empowerment, which is a very, very big question.
It is.
I will let you two address these.
Well, yeah.
Do you want to go or do you want me to, Shirley?
Yeah, I mean, and I'll handle the second question. And I think a lot of this comes from when you're working with your partners, in particular in your unique communities. Obviously, as a financial institution, you're going to understand what your rules and regulations are. A lot of times, your other partners, in particular, let's just take the example here in the US. A lot of times, the domestic violence resource centers are governed a lot of times by what they can do by our particular laws and guidelines, not just from a federal level, but a state level as well. So that's why those partnerships are so important, to align yourself with others that already understand and have an expertise or have those connections with advocacy or your senators or representatives or whoever your elected officials are in your unique area. So I think that would be the first way, and it's probably the easiest way to ensure that most of those are covered in your unique communities. Because like you said, even here in the United States, every state has different laws on how domestic violence and human trafficking is handled.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Shirley. And I would say too, think back to the bridge metaphor. I'll stop sharing my screen here. It's two pillars, right? You've got that agency, that local agency, that this is what they do, right? They support survivors of different situations and work with them. Certainly, there's no age limit for them in most situations. Not in the United States. There may be in other countries, but really the ones that are designed here are designed to help everybody, of all ages. Now, on the credit union side, that may be different. And we're actually working with a credit union right now in Minnesota. Shout out to St. Cloud. And we're asking those questions. You know, how young can a survivor be to independently open an account on their own? And so there are different. There's member rules and there's survivor rules that are part of us doing the exploration. And so some folks are asking in the chat. I love seeing everybody. Oh my God, all over the world. This is incredible. I love all this love. But in the Caribbean, how can we do something like this? Well, it starts with a call. It starts with a conversation. The answer is going to be it depends on a lot of situations, just due to what is the infrastructure, what are the laws, what are the organizations that are there, both on the agency side, but also on the credit union side as well, the cooperative financial model side. But the fun is in the discovery, and we would love to talk to anybody who wants to do something like this, whether you work with us or not. This is needed everywhere all at once right now. So however we can support.
Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. I want to tackle one more of the questions here from one of the attendees, and her name is Teresa, and she is asking, what happens when you have a very difficult situation and the financial abuse comes from someone who is very, very close to you, highly respected, and or a spouse, because there may be cases where in certain countries the woman is requested to surrender her finances to the spouse, right? And I don't know if this question can be addressed here in this forum, but it is definitely one of the big things that we brought in our conversations when we first started talking about this, of how different it is from country to country. So I don't know if you want to, just chime in a little bit here.
Yeah. Shirley, do you want to address, or do you want me to? I'm happy to.
I think maybe even using your example of what you've experienced or seen around in your work when you first got started, I think would be an eloquent way of addressing this.
Yeah, it certainly does depend. I will tell you, it is very common that mostly women, not all, but mostly women, right? Statistically, in this case, when they flee with nothing, and I mean nothing. They're literally oh, sorry, I just got an echo. The phone itself may be stripped from them as they're fleeing, and so that's part of the challenge at the very beginning of the timing of when to connect a financial institution into this. And so that whether that's in a different country or in this country, that is quite common. When somebody flees, they literally flee with nothing but the clothing on their back. And so, the challenge from there is, okay, well, how do we first address safety? How do we first address shelter, and making sure that we're providing the core structural things that the survivor needs first. And that's another reason why it's so important that you have a local agency shelter that can be part of this to start, because that is heavy work that really the credit unions are not designed to be able to handle. And so the agencies will get that survivor stable to a point where we can start to begin to address the financial abuse portions of it. So I'm not sure if that answered your question. I can tell you that is a very common thing that we've seen, is that many cases, because of the financial abuse, they have no money, nothing, when they first arrive at these shelters. And there are grants, and there are different programs that can at least help get them started on a journey in those situations. But it really depends on where you're at and what the resources are.
Thank you. And I think what is important for the community here, that the exact same opportunities do not exist for all women everywhere, right?
That's true.
That was one
Very
of the
true.
things that I, highlighted when we talked about Global Women's and our community,
Hmm.
because we talk about shelters, we talk about grants that exist. Some of these things exist on a large scale in the United States and perhaps not in some of the other countries.
Sure.
So I think to wrap up here today, what we do need to highlight is that the financial empowerment is a responsibility we all have, and I think this all comes together from different aspects of our work.
Yeah.
Right, your work, our work through Global Women's, our organization. I think we have a lot of individuals who are very intrigued and very interested from this wonderful session, and just seeing different ways that we can help, because a financially empowered individual actually, contributes tremendously to the community, to their family, and it's a good business case at the end of the day for all of us. So thank you
Oh,
both for joining us and for
thank you.
taking the time
Thank you.
for being with us.
Thank you.
We want to thank our attendees for joining us and being with us today, and want to remind everyone who was here today, if you would like to see more of these sessions or participate in more of these, just like this one, obviously our registration is open for the World Credit Union Conference in Australia this summer. 2026 WCUC will be taking place in Sydney, and it will be in partnership with our Customer-Owned Banking Association, who is our partner member at World Council in Sydney. You can see the QR code right on the screen to learn more. Again, thank you to our guests for taking the time and being with us. Today's webinar, you can find it on the YouTube channel in a couple of days. Thank you everyone from all around the globe. Love seeing all of our continents present here, for joining us, and have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Thank
Be
you, Lena.
well, be
Hopefully we'll
safe, be healthy.
see you at GAC. Thank you.